We are gathered here today to mourn the death of a great man. Jackson Howard was many things to all of us. He was a toy maker, he was a savior, he was possibly a pedophile, but most of all, he was a shuffler. He was the best damn shuffler any of us have ever seen. Many of us mourn his absence. May he rest in peace, and may we wish him well on his journey into the ever-glowing afterlife that he deserves. Amen. And now that I've got that out of the way, I've got some real talk I need to do. And I understand what I'm about to say is a highly volatile and triggering phrase that I'm sure many people will not agree with. And I'm sure that the internet will respond in a completely reasonable, mature, and measured response to what I'm about to utter. But Jackson Howard needed to die. And you are probably wondering, how could I possibly say such a horrible thing? All of us love Jackson, and I understand. I used him too. He did just as many favors for me as he is to everyone else. He was a super important card who deserves his place in Netrunner history, absolutely. I totally understand why everyone is all over his dick. And yeah, I get it. I mean, who wouldn't want to be all over some of that? But when it comes to this particular aspect of rotation, which is undoubtedly one of arguably the biggest aspect of rotation, I have had this discussion numerous times with numerous people, and I am absolutely on Damon's side when it comes to this, and that is that Jackson Howard needed to get out of the game, and he was ultimately bad for it. And that is a really, really mean thing to say to a card everyone loves so much, and I've heard numerous arguments as to why Jackson Howard should have been saved from rotation like some of the other cards and so on and so forth, and why him going is nothing short of the biblical apocalypse, but that's what this is about. I'm here to address those concerns and make my arguments, and one by one counter the arguments that I've had used against me in this regard. So, save your comments to the end of the video, listen to everything I have to say, and then we'll see if I can change anyone's mind. So, take a seat, eat a Hot Pocket or something. Actually, screw that, don't eat Hot Pockets, they're disgusting. Find a snack, I don't care. Sit down, let's get this done. So, when I have this discussion with people, there are typically 3 points they try to use to explain why Jackson Howard should be in Core Set 2.0 or whatever. And the first of those points is that Jackson Howard exists to do a needed job, and that is to deal with the fundamental issue of agenda flood for the Corp, so that they have a way to handle being flooded and don't just automatically lose the game because of being randomly smited by RNG Jesus. And you know what? That's absolutely right. That is a cold, hard, inarguable fact that is exactly why Jackson Howard was printed, and that Corps absolutely need a way to deal with not just automatically losing to random agenda flood. But therein lies the problem, that Jackson Howard does that job, but he does it way, way too well, to the point that he's basically an overpowered card that was allowed to exist without restriction this whole time because he did a needed job. So not only did Jackson Howard, A, completely warp deck building more than any other card in the existence of the game. Every non-yellow deck has -3 influence automatically. That's not insignificant. But he also let you hide up to 3 agendas at a time at instant speed, which means that the runner never had a chance to steal any of them in the first place, but he also gives you a whole bunch of free extra tempo through draw, all at no cost and no risk to the Corp in any way, of any shape, of any form at any point in the game. That is too powerful. And just to compare that to another card with a very similar problem to try to drive home my point, let's take a look at Aaron Marin, whatever, who is really, really the runner equivalent of Jackson Howard. Like, if there's a runner equivalent of Jackson Howard, it has to be Aaron. Aaron was printed for the express purpose of solving a problem. He was an answer to the overwhelming NBN dominance and, tag and bag, exchange of information, freaking breaking news 24/7 boom, total nonsense bullshit decks that I hate with the burning fury of 1,000 suns, but I digress. He was an answer to the overbearingness of yellow, and he absolutely did that, but in every single matchup, no matter what, even if you weren't playing against a tag-heavy deck, he was still a gigantic pile of free draw tempo at no risk and basically no cost to the player in any way. And what just happened to Aaron Marin? That's right, he's flat out, straight up banned. Not restricted, not MWL'd, he's dead in the ground with a bullet in his chest. And if that kind of a card, with that many similarities in origin and overpoweredness to Jackson Howard, gets flat out banned, that might be a hint that maybe Jackson Howard was a little over the top as well. Then comes point number 2. These Jackson replacements are all terrible. And this one really, really drives me nuts. Because preemptive action is perfectly fine. And it is exactly what I said the Jackson Howard replacement needed to be months before preemptive action would ever actually hit the shelves. And when it did, I was ecstatic because now all my decks can finally have the 3 more influence they're supposed to have. And I get it, yes, preemptive action is not as powerful as Jackson Howard. No, obviously. But it's not supposed to be, because Jackson Howard was overpowered. Okay, and if you're complaining, as I've heard some people do, that things like preemptive action just flat out don't work, you're wrong. Like, you're literally factually wrong, and I can actually prove it. So I am going to do a little quiz here, a little test. I'm going to put 2 lines of text up on the screen. One of them describes Jackson Howard. The other one describes preemptive action. I want you to look at these and tell me which one is which. Go. Oh, hey, look at that. They're the exact same thing. Because they're actually the exact same thing. Preemptive action is literally the bottom half of Jackson Howard, aka the explicit reason why he was printed, the job he exists to do, his raison d'etre, or however the hell you pronounce that was probably wrong, copied and pasted onto another card. It is literally the exact same goddamn thing. Now, yes, of course, Jackson also had that other little thing stapled onto him, and that's not insignificant. I understand that makes him a better, stronger card. But that's the problem, is that he also had that stapled onto him. Now, you might be saying, well, of course he had that. It helps you overdraw so you can toss out your agendas. It's like, well, okay. First of all, you put Jackson Howard down once. That's a click. You res him, and then you use his draw ability. That's a second click. You have spent 2 clicks. You have drawn 2 cards, just like you normally would. Now, obviously, you might go, it's like, well, duh, you can just keep clicking him. Yeah. And yeah, as long as Jackson Howard stays out there, you can just keep clicking him and keep drawing a bunch of free extra cards. But if you do that, then you are playing a 0 to res yellow asset that gives you a huge amount of free draw that also lets you hide your agendas super easily in a way where the runner never had a chance to get them. Gee, doesn't that sound kind of familiar? Huh. What happened to that card? Now, your next point of contention about why preemptive action is the worst thing since unsliced bread is that it also has a click attached to it. You have to spend a click to use the card. You have to use it on your turn. And yes, using a click versus instant speed, absolutely a downgrade. But it's a downgrade that needed to freaking happen. Because let's be super real here. I want you to stop. Don't, get your hands off the keyboard, quit trying to post stuff before the video is over. Sit down, stop, and think about what Netrunner is, what Netrunner is supposed to be, about the whole quote-unquote classic Netrunner feeling people were complaining had been going out of the game until now, which is why the changes were meant to bring that feeling back. It's supposed to be a game about hide and seek, about information, about protecting servers and making bluffs and taking risks and yada yada yada, all that kind of stuff. And now I want you to sit here and realize what Jackson Howard allows you to do. Because what Jackson Howard allows you to do is that you can have 7 points worth of agendas sitting in a completely naked, in a totally uniced archives, and doesn't even, the runner can know full well that they're there. Don't even attempt to hide it. You can have 7 points worth of agendas just sitting there blind and open, completely open, in a totally undefended, uniced, naked server, and you can let them sit there for a turn, for 2 turns, for 5 turns, for 10 turns, as long as Jackson Howard is there. And you, as the Corp, are under absolutely, positively, no threat of the runner stealing any of those agendas whatsoever for the entire time. All the while, you are simultaneously getting a bunch of free tempo from a zero-cost, 1-influence card. Alright, not only is that overpowered, but that spits in the face of what Netrunner is supposed to be and how the game is supposed to play. And you freaking know it. You can't argue that with me. I dare you to argue with me that the situation I just described is anything else but completely against the core values of how the game is supposed to work. I dare you to go into your bathroom right now and look at yourself in the mirror and look yourself in the face and try to deny that with a straight face. And okay, yeah, maybe I'm getting a little mean here. Let's back off a bit. But my point still stands that Jackson Howard allowed you to take a fundamentally bad, stupid, this shouldn't be in the game, don't ever do this play, and turn it into a completely effortless, totally safe, get-out-of-jail-free card that the runner can do effectively nothing about. And that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't be in the game, that's wrong, it shouldn't be a thing. Okay? And just as another aside, remember that other card with a super powerful tempo draw effect that is instant speed, and when it first came out, everyone immediately said, wow, that's super overpowered. That really needs a click attached to it. Gee, what card was that, and what happened to that card? I'm no Sherlock Holmes, but I'm starting to see a pattern. But essentially, my point is that it's not that preemptive action is a bad card. It's not. Preemptive action is the level of card that effect should have been at in the beginning, and that Jackson Howard is just way too damn good. Okay, that's the point. This, and people complaining about, it's like, oh, I can't believe I have to use preemptive action, it's not Howard, it's so stupid. Like, every time I hear that, all I think of is, like, you needed a way to get to work in the morning, and you just happened to have like this ridiculous car that could transform into an airplane, and you could fly over the highway and skip over all the traffic and just get straight to work. And I understand you lost your flying car. Okay, I'm sure it was super cool. I'm sure you loved flying it. And like if I had a flying car and I lost it, I would be super bummed out too. But you still need to get to work, and you still sound really spoiled and really dumb sitting here complaining like, man, I can't believe I have to use this perfectly functional and totally useful regular car to get to work. I can't believe I can't cheat over traffic and basically have to drive on the roads like everyone else now. This is so stupid. You know, like that's what I hear when I hear people complaining about preemptive action. Like that's what that sounds like to me. So, I mean, you're basically mad that you don't have free money to buy whatever you want from, you know, Sugar Daddy Jackson Howard's wallet anymore, and you actually have to like go down to the Chick-fil-A and get a job to pay bills now. Like that's what that complaint sounds like to me. So anyway, let's cut this off and get to the last point. All right, so this last and final point, and the one that I've heard most recently, is, haven't you played games since Jackson rotated out? The corp win rate is horrible. All corps are worthless without Jackson Howard. And you know what? You're probably totally right. Like, I haven't looked at the data, but I don't doubt for a second that in the short amount of time between when Core 2.0 rotation was announced and the ban list leak that just happened, that corps have been getting dumpstered left and right. I don't doubt for a second that corps have spent the last 2 weeks just getting run over all the time. But it's not just because of Jackson Howard, okay? First of all, it is part of the issue, but not in the same way that you think it is. Because, first of all, people are just now starting to play without him, which means we have all these players all these court players who have basically all been reduced to like these awkward, wobbling newborn giraffes that have to like weirdly learn how to walk again because like you've been spending the last 4 straight years leaning on your super fancy, cushy, automated Jackson Howard crutches, and now your legs have atrophied into Twizzlers. So you have all these players basically just learning to play the game all over again, but not only are you a weird little baby giraffe trying to learn how to walk again, but you're also doing that while at the same time being like attacked by hyenas or something, because this is also at a time when the runners are in a very high position of power in the meta. Between Blue Moose and Temujin, they're disgustingly rich. They're able to put Inversificator and Paperclip and Film Critic and Employee Strike all into the deck at once pretty easily. You know, it's like, yeah, I don't doubt that a bunch of people trying to adjust to a major change, you know, against a giant tidal wave of power like that, sucked at it. Okay, that's not a surprise. But the point is, like, don't sit here and try to pretend like Jackson Howard being gone is the only reason that happened, okay? I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't sit there and complain, oh my god, the runners have no win conditions left. There's no Siphon, there's no RDI, there's no Parasite, there's no Medium, there's no Yogg, there's no Deja Vu, there's no Nerve Agent, there's no Keyhole. Wow, look at all that orange. And complain that, oh, the runners have no win conditions, how are they going to do anything? And then at the exact same time, complain that all Corp decks are garbage because you have a slightly weaker version of one card. Okay, that's just like come on, guys. That's just silly. That's just silly. Like, come on. And in my games lately, I keep seeing it time and time again, where like Jackson Howard has more or less like raised this generation of lazy, over-entitled court play, where like you try to get where like people don't understand that, you know, you have to actually ice archives now, because like people will do stuff like you get flooded, so your turn is mandatory draw, play a card, toss 2 cards into archives, and then let them sit there. Don't ice it. Just let them sit there undefended for like 3 turns. And then when I casually dirty laundry archives and steal 2 agendas and get 4 points, they sit there and go, oh man, no Jackson, Corp is awful now, Corp can't win. And I'm like, why didn't you just ice archives? Like, I've got 1 breaker out, you have 15 credits, there's no way you couldn't have defended that. Why didn't you ice archives? Well, no Jackson, It's like, because thanks to Jackson Howard, up until now, like, the mere idea that you would ice archives to protect archives for the agendas in it is like completely foreign to players, because until now, the only reason you would ice archives would be to prevent specific runner effects. For like, I don't want to leave a server open for Temujin, I don't want to let them get off a retrieval run, or you're playing against noise or something. But the idea of I should ice this server because there are agendas in this server, as is like right now, that's like completely foreign to players. And yeah, I know, that's a particularly bad anecdotal story about the problem, but it still illustrates my point that you need to get over Jackson Howard, okay? He was your first boyfriend, I get it. You'll miss him a lot. He took you to prom, it was awesome. But, you know, you graduated from high school and you had to go your separate ways and you'll find someone else. Things will be fine, okay? You need to get over it. And your new tools to use are not that bad at all. And after you make the adjustment, you'll be fine. Okay, you just have to be willing to actually try to do it. And really, after the ban list, runners got watered down quite a bit. So from here on out, things should be a lot more even. Really, if your biggest complaint about court play in the coming days is that you're that horrified by the concept that you actually have to bother to ice a server in order to protect the contents of that server for a single turn so that you can play preemptive action, and that's the most mortifying thing you can think of, then frankly...
That's bullshit. I'm calling you out on that bullshit. I have no doubt that is bullshit. You're trying to pull one over on me.
Anyway, all hail our new Jateki overlords. Thank you and good night.